Hello and welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag show where we talk about video games, the latest in the industry, news, trends, opinion. And today we're talking about one of the biggest things that can happen in this industry, new consoles coming out. I'm Jordan Miner. I'm joined by Will Greenwald,
Hello.
my colleague who I've spent countless hours talking about video games with
Yep.
in the many years that we've known each other in real life and on the internet.
Indeed.
So Sony had their big PS5 event the other day, depending on when you're watching this, where they finally told us PS5 is coming out November 12th. You can get the main version for $500, or for $400 you can get the disc-free version.
Yep.
And now, between that on the Xbox, Series S, Series X stuff, it finally feels like these are real things that are coming out and not just like a hypothetical threat of like maybe new consoles will come out this year.
Yeah, not the whole like, are they going to postpone it because of the thing? Are they?
Yeah, it's weird.
No. Okay, November. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's been so weird. It feels like this didn't exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Will, I watched that whole event. I assume you at least.
So did I.
Yeah. So what are your kind of immediate takeaways from like that price? Those configurations, the release date. Did you pre-order one?
I did not yet.
Okay.
I on a personal level, I'm not entirely sold on the new generation yet, and I don't think Sony or Microsoft have really made the case yet. Because, like, especially when stuff like Miles Morales and is Demon's Souls going to be PS5 only, or like also PS4?
Demon's Souls, I think, is PS5, but Horizon Zero
right.
West,
Yeah.
Forbidden Dawn, that's
that
also
one,
PS4.
That one and Miles, they're still PS4. And it's like, okay, there's definitely cool stuff coming, but it's coming next year, so why not wait till next year to get the system when it'll be a bit less crazy than a launch? And it says a lot that with the PlayStation Plus collection, where, hey, okay, we know that launches are always kind of light, so here's some of the best games of the last generation you can play.
Right, on your console that you might already have.
Yeah. But the big question is the graphical updates. Like how much is this new power and new speed going to really affect the games we play? And from what we've seen so far, whether it's from Xbox or PlayStation 5, I'm not really feeling a whole lot. Like, looking at any of the stuff they've demoed, is it really that much different from playing something on an Xbox One X, or we can get into their name convention another time, it's insane, or like a PlayStation 4 Pro, because they already can upscale to 4K, they already do some really good things, and like there are these incremental upgrades that were just not really making the case for me.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest kind of tangible example people point to is in Ratchet and Clank. They're like fast loading, between the different worlds because they have their like SSD, which is neat. But yeah, that's still like a lot to explain to somebody.
It is neat, but
yeah.
It also makes me think like, have you played Titanfall 2?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's a good point actually. Yeah.
Like if you build the levels and the sets like the right way, you can do cool stuff like that, and you don't necessarily need the SSD of the PS5 to go between different areas if you're meant to go between different areas. Now, if it's like a whole open world, which Ratchet and Clank usually isn't, and you can actually jump between multiple worlds like completely on the fly, sure, that's impressive, but I really feel like these are just big set pieces, and you can do anything with set pieces already.
Yeah, and like we'll get into more when we talk about kind of the whole landscape. But like, yeah, like, obviously the PS5 is kind of that one. Besides the disk drive, it's kind of like the same like specs on both boxes. But with Xbox, like, there's like significant differences between the Series S and Series X. So like, they're already kind of asking developers to scale their games in such dramatic ways anyway.
Well, the biggest news I've seen, or at least the biggest like cooling factor of the Xbox Series X, besides the fact that it has no disk drive, which is just a huge, like, we didn't exactly like the Xbox One SAD, Series S all digital. Again, their names are weird. But the fact that the Series S, it has a third the teraflops of the Series X, and that the games they play from the last generation won't be enhanced for Xbox One X, makes me wonder, is this even going to be as powerful as an Xbox One X?
I think in some respects it's not. I think it's like there was the speculation that like in terms of just like raw graphical power that it's maybe not, but that its CPU is more modern and
It is, but without the extra processing power, is that really going to make much of a difference? I mean, SSD, sure, but
Yeah, I mean, it as long as it plays Game Pass, that's all they care about. That's all that Microsoft cares about.
Yeah, they are big on Game Pass. I'm still amazed by their whole thing of putting every new Microsoft Game Studio game just straight on it. So like, hey, new Halo, and hey, here's stuff people actually are getting enthusiastic about, like Flight Simulator. All that stuff's on there.
Right. But to bring it back to Sony, so yeah, there were also just like their rollout of some of this information was so like scattershot. Like people had to go on Twitter to be like, oh, now pre-orders are up like now.
Yep.
Or it turns out Demon Souls is a launch title, and so it feels weird to have all this time, do all this build up, and then finally when they're like ready to say this stuff, it's so haphazard.
It's it feels kind of Sony like I bet if there was a an E3, or if they had like their PlayStation experience or whatever weird like actual show they'd just put it all out there. But I think like they haven't really gotten quite the hang of, say, what Nintendo has of, okay, we're going to figure out when and where we're going to announce stuff online and just do it. And just, yeah, it's made Sony really seem haphazard. And even with the like I've seen for the last 3 main streams they've done, like I would like them to put less budget in the transitions and the weird throbbing shapes they always have between the trailers, and just give us some bullet points at the beginning or the end, because they need to work on formatting.
Yeah, they'll like transition to like a guy in front of a green screen, and he'll say like 2 sentences, and that'll be it.
Yep.
But I think also, the Xbox kind of forced their hand in a couple of ways here. I feel in terms of price. I think there was some speculation that if they felt they could launch this at 600, they would have, but they cannot. They cannot. They have to undercut Microsoft, or at least match Microsoft.
I think they would have, but the PS3 debacle was still like anyone who remembers that, the fact that they had the balls to put out a PS3 for $600, and okay, this was some time ago,
Yeah.
but like that number is almost cursed for Sony, and I think they had to get it into 500, both to put it in parity with the Xbox Series X and to just avoid the comparisons with the PS3 launch, because the PS3 became a really good system, but it lagged for some time because of the huge price and gaming issues.
Yeah. And also just I think in terms of the timing of when they put this all out there, like obviously like they're running out of time regardless. But Xbox had their hand forced because the Series S leaked and all that. So they were kind of like, all right, here's the price, here's everything. And then that kind of I think really started a ticking clock for Sony to be like, okay, this is also when we're coming out, and we're also like the same price or a little cheaper or a little more expensive. Do you think $100 difference? Do you think a disk drive costs $100?
No, it is. I don't know. I think like the price is, that's like understandable. Okay, it's $100, and it's not. I'm sure the actual drive itself doesn't cost nearly as much. But okay, there's the functionality. You're taking it out. You're saving $100, whatever. But I just want them to combine the two so I can get one with a disk drive but no goiter, because that weird like bulge is just the ugliest thing I've seen on a game console in like 3 generations.
Yeah, it's really something. Yeah, in my mind, they're either overcharging for one or undercharging for the other. And
I mean, I think ultimately they're undercharging, because Sony has like a kind of a habit of doing that, and the between the SSDs, the new Asus Zen 2 cores, I think both of these new generations are. I would really love to see a teardown of just how much these components are, because the pricing is wild for what they say the performance is going to be, except for the Xbox Series S, which is just kind of what.
Right. Yeah. So I guess like in terms of just big games, I would say the biggest new game they had that doesn't come from a hateful author is Final Fantasy 16.
That's wild, and I'm excited about it. I actually really liked Final Fantasy 15. I still sometimes play Final Fantasy 14. I haven't gotten anywhere near cap.
The turnaround in perception on that game is really inspiring.
Yeah, on 14 or 15.
14.
Well, that was because they put it out and it was so bad they had to redo it. And then when they did version 2.0, then it was like, oh wow, this is awesome. Like it's one of the most epic comebacks I've seen of any game.
Yeah, it's really something. Yeah, just Square in general. People really like FF7 remake. So yeah, what do you think of the 16 trailer then? Yeah, I kind of got vibes of both of those games from that trailer.
It felt very much like it could have been FF15 too. Like it seemed like they were hitting so many of the same beats of like Final Fantasy is a series as a whole, and the whole like the primordials and these god beings of Final Fantasy 15, and apparently I don't want to spoil anything for 15 if you haven't played it yet, but just a lot of similarities to 15, which feels super weird because thematically and tonally, all the different Final Fantasies outside of like the subsequels, like 13-2, 10-2, have been wildly different. And this just feels like kind of a more old-timey 15, but with hitting the same notes. So I'm really wondering what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that it also looked like a real game. Like people were complaining about the graphics, so I'm like, this looks like a real game and not like a lie, which I really
Yeah,
appreciate out of a gameplay trailer.
yeah, and it looks real good, and it's got some amazing talent behind it. So if you're a fan of The Last Remnant, you should be into the game. And well, I know how much you love it.
I'll give it a shot. Somebody on PC also.
Yeah,
So yeah, so kind of it for this last bit here. So now I think all the important major details about both of these consoles, well, I guess like four of them, are now out here, and we're about to go into this holiday season where theoretically some people might buy them. So yeah, we're just some sort of like last thoughts here on this upcoming console generation before like we really get into it.
I'm looking forward to checking them out. I'm not seeing a whole lot of selling points between them of like if obviously we need to get these things in to cover them, so I'm going to get my hands on it to test it out, and so we have reviews for it. But if that wasn't the case, I don't know personally I'd be all that enthused of spending that much on a new system until at least halfway through 2021, when some of these games are actually going to be there and it'll be way more of a better argument for it. But for now, they look good. I don't know if they look that much better than the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro to really justify it.
Yeah.
I'm actually more excited about the supposed, and we've been hearing about it for like 2 years, as rumor, the more powerful Switch, which might be as powerful as the
Hey,
PS4.
hey, yeah, get some Hyrule Warriors, Monster Hunter Rise. Um,
I'm excited about those. Like those are games
I
I'm
know you
more
will. I
excited
know you
about.
are.
It's like, yeah, 2 Monster Hunter games.
Yeah, for me, obviously Sony's coming into this position. Sony's coming to this generation in a very strong position, which is
Yep.
kind of the norm for them. Things like the PS3 and like the Vita are kind of like aberrations in their history. Um, and yeah, they obviously have a very strong stable of like if they get out, Miles Morales is not a full game, but that's still exciting. Ratchet and Clank. They said that the new God of War is going to come out next year.
Yep.
Um, if they get all that out in 2021, that's a very appealing lineup. Um,
I think Xbox does have some appealing stuff to it too, because they're doing this weird like installment plan thing. Like I forget the name for it, but
yeah,
it's not Game Pass, but it's you get the system on layaway basically.
right.
And between that and Xbox Game Pass, they're really trying to do not game as service, but game console as service, and
Yeah,
that could be really appealing.
they're really trying to pivot into something very different. Between that and the Game Pass stuff and the XCloud stuff. Um, yeah, they're like really trying to make a play to be like a Netflix for games, and if they pull that off, that's also a very great position to be in. Like that's like kind of uncharted territory. Um, they could almost just be doing like people talk about how Nintendo doesn't compete against Sony and Microsoft, but like if Microsoft becomes that, they're also like doing their own thing. So we could just
Yeah.
have peace. I can just get a new graphics card and not care about any of this.
Yeah, and the fact that Nintendo and Microsoft are now like buddies enough that hey, Ori and the Will of the Wisp are coming to Switch. So
Yeah,
like,
it's a great game. I reviewed it.
I'm still holding out for Master Chief for Smash Brothers, but
That would also be great, and I feel like
it
that's
would
like
be.
I feel like that's not impossible.
I'm
Um,
surprised we haven't seen like a Master Chief collection on Switch. Like that's totally doable.
yeah. But yeah, this generation is gonna be weird. That's really like
Yeah.
that's my biggest. It's gonna be very strange. Again, it's got me caring about like graphics cards more than I ever have in my entire life.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like among the hardcore gamers, the wind has been taken out by the revelation of like the 3080 and the 3090 and just how completely beast they are.
especially
So,
because the consoles are just PCs now, so like it's
yeah,
such a more direct comparison. Yeah.
and the fact that there's so much more power in the 3090. Like we obviously we can't actually benchmark consoles, but
Mhm.
it's safe to say that if you build a gaming PC that costs 4 times more minimum than an Xbox Series X and has a 3090 in it, it's going to be way more powerful and probably last a lot longer, just in terms of how much you can bump up the resolution, how much longer you can keep playing games on it. But
Yeah, you'll be able to play you'll be able to play all of Microsoft's games and
yeah,
like a growing number of Sony's games.
yeah, it's
So
going to be interesting to see how all this mutation between generations is going to happen, and if this could be just a resurgence of PC gaming on top of it.
Yeah, I think people should care less than ever before about what exactly they're playing their thing on, and just be like, I just want to play a game, and like there are like multiple extremely viable options. Like, so like pledging your loyalty to one box or another, I think is increasingly irrelevant and probably good for culture.
Now you
Um,
say that, and that would be good, but that ain't going to happen. There's still going to be psychotic fanboys out there who
all right, well
inexplicably get angry.
all right, well we'll come back at the end of this generation and see what happened in like
Yeah,
5. There's even if things even exist in if there's even another generation of video games ever again, or a generation of our lives ever again.
it's all just Xbox now. So,
Yeah.
where do they move on from here?
All right, Will, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll check it. Watch out for these reviews on PC Mag November, and then we'll see you later. See you next time.
Be seeing you.